morning and welcome to Beginning the Word. Our text today comes from Hebrews, the 11th chapter, verse 1 through 40. We will be reading selected verses from that text. By faith, Abel offered to God a more acceptable sacrifice than Cain, through which he was commended as righteous, God commending him by accepting his gifts. And through his faith, though he died, he still speaks. By faith Enoch was taken up so that he should not see death, and that he was not found because God had taken him. Now before he was taken, he was commended as having pleased God. Later in the text it says, by faith Noah, being warned of God concerning events as yet unseen, in reverent fear constructed an ark for the saving of his household. By this he condemned the world and became an heir of the righteousness that comes by faith. By faith Abraham obeyed when he was called to go out to a place that he was to receive as an inheritance. And he went out not knowing where he was going. By faith he went to live in the land of promise, as in a foreign land, living in tents with Isaac and Jacob, heirs with him of the same promise. For he was looking forward to the city that has foundations, whose designer and builder is God. By faith Sarah herself received power to conceive, even when she was past the age, since she considered him faithful who had promised. Therefore, from one man, and him as good as dead, were born descendants as many as the stars of heaven, and as many as the innumerable grains of sand by the seashore. By faith Abraham, when he was tested, offered up Isaac, and he who had received the promises was in the act of offering up his only son, of whom it was said, through Isaac shall your offspring be named. He considered that God was able even to raise him from the dead, from which, figuratively speaking, he did receive him back. By faith Isaac invoked future blessings on Jacob and Esau. By faith Jacob, when he was dying, blessed each of his sons of Joseph, bowing in worship over the head of his staff. By faith Joseph, at the end of his life, made mention of the exodus of the Israelites and gave directions concerning his bones. By faith Moses, when he was born, was hidden for 3 months by his parents, because they saw that the child was beautiful, and they were not afraid of the king's edict. By faith Moses, when he was grown up, refused to be called the son of Pharaoh's daughter, choosing rather to be mistreated with the people of God than to enjoy the fleeting pleasures of sin. He considered the reproach of Christ greater wealth than the treasures of Egypt, for he was looking to the reward. By faith he left Egypt, not being afraid of the anger of the king, for he endured as seeing him who is invisible. By faith he kept the Passover and sprinkled the blood, so that the destroyer of the firstborn might not touch them. By faith the people crossed the Red Sea as on dry land, but the Egyptians, when they attempted to do the same, were drowned. By faith the walls of Jericho fell down after they had been encircled for 7 days. By faith Rahab the prostitute did not perish with those who were disobedient, because she had given a friendly welcome to the spies. We're continuing our study through the book of Hebrews. That was a lengthy reading from chapter 11, enumerating the heroes of faith. Thank you for your patience as we read through that. This is the last section of the book of Hebrews, this section demonstrating to us that the faith of those heroes, the faith of the fathers, is only perfected if it is realized in our faith, that we are the culmination and the completion of the things that they hoped for. We've observed in our previous 2 episodes some of the defining statements about faith that the author makes, and in this text now he enumerates these great heroes of faith, and we'll take a moment to think through these heroes. I have a chart here that includes all the heroes listed in that text of Hebrews, the 11th chapter, and I want you to notice that each of them, if you read the text carefully, each of them, their name is listed, and then an action is attributed to that person. Abel offered a sacrifice. Enoch was taken. Noah constructed an ark. Abraham obeyed when he was told to leave, and Abraham went to that country. Sarah conceived. Abraham offered his son Isaac. Isaac invoked the promises that were made to him through his father. Jacob blessed his children. Joseph gave directions. Moses, it says, was hidden, and there's some disagreement about this text. It need not be. The faith was not on the part of Moses. He was a baby. The faith was on the part of his mother. And anybody reading this text reasonably can conclude that it was the faith of the mother that hid the baby Moses. However, the text tells us, because we're familiar with the story of Moses, that by faith Moses was hidden. It was Moses' mother that did the hiding. Moses, nevertheless, his mother hid him, believing something special, believing in something in the future. Moses refused when he got older, and it was the action he took. Moses left. It says Moses kept the law regarding the Passover. The people crossed the Red Sea, we're told. It says that by faith the walls of Jericho fell. Well, it wasn't the walls that had faith, it was the people walking around the walls. This is another example similar to the previous one where the subject of the sentence isn't necessarily the one to whom we would attribute faith. It was the people walking around the city of Jericho that had faith, and it was because of their faith that the walls fell. Rahab, by faith, did not perish, and the text that we will read in our next episode goes on to enumerate Gideon, Barak, Samson, Jephthah, David, Samuel, the prophets, and others. And it says of them that they conquered, they enforced, they obtained, they stopped the mouths of lions, they quenched the fire, they escaped the sword, they were strengthened, they were made mighty, they defeated their enemies, they received their dead to life again. They were tortured, they suffered, they were stoned, they were made destitute, they were afflicted, they wandered. These were incredible people of faith, all of these great heroes of faith. And it is an obvious observation that while God was not ashamed to be called their God because of their faith, that with every single example, that faith resulted in action. And this is a confirmation of a lesson that James teaches us, that faith without works is dead. And in this example of the great heroes of faith, every one of them is associated with a great act of that faith. And you see, that's what real biblical faith is. It is a conviction, an assurance that is so strong, as the author told us earlier, that we act on that in conviction. Abel believed in his sacrifice, and in believing he offered it by faith. Sarah believed she would conceive, and she did conceive. The people believed that in crossing the Red Sea, they would be blessed. And with that conviction, based on that assurance and that reasonable expectation of crossing the Red Sea, they lit out and they crossed the Red Sea. They acted based on their faith. Friends, if you think you will be saved by faith alone without works, you are mistaken. True biblical faith has works as a part of it. Should not go without notice one of the statements that's made in this text as he goes through these and as he talks about these. He says of these, right in the midst of this incredible narrative, speaking about Gideon and Barak and Samson, of all the things they endured, the suffering, the conquering, the being afflicted, the wandering, he says, of whom the world was not worthy. Those who seek God, those who suffer on behalf of God, those who act in faith, this world is not worthy of their faith. Then he says of them, all of these, though commended through their faith, did not receive what was promised, since God had provided something better for us, that apart from us, they should not be made perfect. We invite you to dial in next week and listen to next week's episodes. There will be 5 of them where we think through this statement, how that you and I have a great audience observing our behavior, longing to see that the object of their faith is realized in how we participate in this great thing that God has provided for us, being a part of His eternal kingdom, having been born again to walk here on this earth as a member of His kingdom in expectation of that same city that Abraham was looking for, the New Jerusalem. Join us next week. Till then, thanks for joining us on Begin in the Word. I hope as you have begun today in the Word, you will live out today in the Word of God.